Hey everybody, Jay Super Awesome here. I'd like to welcome you all to week number 24 of the TheHORRORman's SlashBack Saturday Challenge. This week's slasher movie theme is Creepy Clown Slashers, and I will be giving my review for Clown. Okay, so getting into the plot for this one. A group of teens fight for their lives as they find themselves trapped in a funhouse, stalked by a killer clown who won't rest until every last one of them is dead. Okay, so getting into my thoughts for this one. With this week's SlashBack Challenge theme of Creepy Clown Slashers, I have chose to watch and review Clown, basically because I haven't heard anybody else talk about it, and it obviously fits this week's theme. The movie opens up in 1994 in Nevada. We have a carnival that has been set up. The local residents are not happy about it and are unable to get the family to leave that is running the circus. So the movie opens up during a riot. The townspeople are murdering the family members off one by one until we only have one survivor left, a young boy, and then the movie will progress 25 years forward. We have 2 carloads of teens who are on their way to a music festival. And I remember counting 9 total characters, and that seems like a lot of people to cram into 2 cars. Anyway, they are pulled over on the side of the road in the middle of the desert because the character that goes by the name of Davy needs to take a pee. The group begins to grow restless as they are waiting on Davy to return, and one person explains that some pees take longer than others. Davy continues to walk further and further away from the group, taking pictures of nature and posting them on his Instagram account. And I find it to be pretty unlikely that this location would have internet, being that it's in the middle of a desert. He eventually arrives at the abandoned town, and I only recall seeing a church and a gas station, and neither one of the buildings looked too run down in my opinion. But both of the buildings were decorated in clown stuff. Finally, he arrives at the funhouse and is attacked by the clown. This is what leads the group to have to finally come and search for him, and eventually they arrive at the funhouse and are locked in. Panicked and scared, the group becomes separated and lost inside the funhouse and picked off by the clown one by one. I thought the set location for the funhouse was pretty decent. I got the sense that the set was pretty small because we kept seeing a lot of the same stuff over and over inside the funhouse. I was a little annoyed at these characters being panicked and scared and lost inside this funhouse because almost everywhere you looked, you could see light shining in between the cracks of the boards. So it really felt like if these characters really wanted to live and survive, they could bust out of the funhouse at any given moment and escape. But that's not what happens. For the most part, I enjoyed watching Clown. It's decent at best, and honestly speaking, I found the first 20 to 30 minutes to be a little bit of a struggle. I didn't really like any of the characters in this movie, and they were highly annoying, and for me, this movie didn't really pick up until they were locked inside the funhouse. So Clown is a low-budget slasher film that was released by the Asylum, and I know that a lot of people are not going to be interested in this one because they don't necessarily have the best track record. For the most part, I normally enjoy their slasher films, but this one was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. While I didn't necessarily hate it or anything to that extreme, I don't believe I necessarily enjoyed it enough that it's going to be one that I can recommend. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the cast of characters we have in Clown. As I had mentioned before, we have 9 total characters in this movie. We have a set of brothers, a set of sisters, we have a quarterback, a linebacker, and then a few other friends to round out the group. In my opinion, none of the characters in this movie were interesting. Not one out of the 9. The dialogue wasn't all that great either, so of course this doesn't do any favors when trying to develop any of these characters. And as far as the acting goes, I wouldn't necessarily consider it to be terrible because I actually have seen much worse, but with saying that, it still wasn't all that great either. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the most important part of a slasher movie, that is the killer and the kills. So the one redeeming quality for this film for me would be that it really does have a really cool creepy clown killer who does have a pretty decent backstory, and his only focus is keeping the family business going. So while he murders his victims and picks them off one by one, he seems to use a little showmanship while he does it. He stalks the corridors of the funhouse, luring his victims into traps before ultimately killing them. And as far as the kills go in this movie, it has a pretty high body count with a pretty wide variety of interesting kills. A lot of times the victims are captured and put on display for the other friends to see. For example, we have one guy who is tied to a chair and is obviously in a hot room. He has popcorn poured down his throat, and the room is so intensely heated that the popcorn begins to pop and his head explodes. So that was pretty interesting. And we also have another person that is tied up in a sack who gets beat to death by a huge test of strength hammer. I would have to say my favorite kill in the entire movie would be a guy who gets his throat cut and his eyeball gouged out by an umbrella. In my opinion, it was the most brutal kill in the entire movie. So for the most part, I thought the kills were pretty fun to watch in this movie. I thought the killer did a really good job with mixing up the kills and using things inside this funhouse to murder his victims. Overall, Clown was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. It definitely has its fair share of flaws. But I really did like the creepy clown killer in this movie. I thought his character was interesting enough, and I thought the kills were creative enough to keep me in this movie. But still, overall, this is going to be one that's hard for me to recommend. If you collect low-budget slasher films, killer clown films to be more exact, then you will probably want this one in your collection. I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. Please like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know if you have seen Clown, or just let me know what you think about my review. And I would like to thank you all for watching.